And you should see my screen. It should say welcome. Basically, what we're going to try to do today is talk about some best practices with regards to just leading salespeople and how your CRM should be part of the solution of really taking your sales team to the next level. If you have a CRM now, great. I'm not going to try and sell you a new one. I'm just going to help you maybe get a little more out of it. So let's get started. First, I will introduce myself. I'm the CEO of SalesNexus. I'm Craig Klein. I've been in sales for 20 plus years. I started off doing hardcore telephone sales, sitting at a desk every day, burning up the phone, and eventually moved into the energy business here in Houston, hiring and firing and training and managing sales teams. Along the way, I got trained in the Sandler sales training methodology, which some of you may be familiar with. For those of you who are not, it's kind of a consultative sales approach for sure. And then more recently, I was trained as an Augmandino coach. If you've ever read the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, then you'll know Augmandino. He wrote that book. For those of you who have not read it, I highly recommend it. Go get yourself a copy. Go on Amazon right now. Order one. It's super short. It's not a long read. It won't take you more than a weekend to get through it. But it's really awesome, and it's not really just about sales. It's really about life in general. It's kind of a neat little parable. So that's a little bit about me. If there's anything that you want to make sure I address today, please type that into the questions, and I'll make sure that we address that as we go through the presentation today. So just a quick little background on SalesNexus. Oh my goodness, you guys may have heard that, but I just spilt my water. That's terrible. Well, let me just keep rolling here. What SalesNexus is all about is we are all about growing businesses. We feel like our mission in life is to help your business grow, because when your business grows, we feel like it truly makes the world a better place. What I mean by that is when your business grows, your employees' lives are improved. You know, they make more money, they're happier, they pay more taxes, they contribute to their churches and other charitable organizations in the community. Your customers experience the same benefit. They benefit from your product or service. Their employees' lives are better off. All their families are better off. We believe that you're truly making the world a better place by doing what you do and growing your business, by finding customers for your business and making them happy. So we want to help you do that. That's what we're all about. So we're different from a lot of our competitors in that we get a lot more engaged in really helping you make it work rather than just handing you the keys to the technology and watching you drive off the lot. Our approach is more to get in the car with you and help you get where you're going. So technically, how we do that, most competing solutions are sort of a CRM platform with like marketing automation and analytics and other tools that you can add on, you know, sort of combine and build the perfect solution for you. Problem is, it gets really complex. It also gets really costly, and you end up needing some sort of IT expert or certified consultant or somebody on your team to help you make it all work, set it up, etc. So what we've done is combine all of this into one offering. The CRM, the marketing automation, email marketing, awesome reporting tools, and we provide the services to help you set it up around your unique business and support the heck out of you going forward. So you're not spending your time managing IT, you're focused on your customers and growing your business. That's what we're all about. What we're going to talk about today is sales process and how creating a sales process allows you to measure things in an objective way, and how that measurement gives you the ability to hold salespeople accountable. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of time management for salespeople and some essential skills that you really should be nurturing and fostering in your sales team all of the time. So, essential skills. Lead nurturing is one of them. You may not believe this. Certainly, if you've been in sales, if you've been around for a little while, then lead nurturing may sound like a superfluous thing that the marketing department, that's their problem. I don't care if they do it or not or whatever. But the world's changed, and the internet is a much bigger part of all of our worlds. And so when people are contacting your company based on finding you on the internet, their level of engagement and sort of readiness to buy is very different. You've probably all experienced this. So if you don't have a way to stay in touch with those folks that are really not very hot leads, but they've reached out to your company in some way, they filled out some form, they downloaded some white paper, whatever, then you're either going to ignore those people, which is not good, not going to help your internet marketing efforts pay off, or you're going to have your salespeople spending way too much time chasing after people who just really aren't ready to be a hot prospect yet. We're going to talk about that a little more as we go. And the other one is empathy. I mentioned before my background in Sandler selling, consulting sales, and really it's all about asking questions and understanding the customer's needs. In Sandler speak, they would say we have to find their pain. What is it that's making them uncomfortable right now, and how can I help them with that, right? So to me, that's just empathy. That's, we all use that in our everyday lives, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, right? Well, today it's more important than ever, because with the changes that the internet has brought to the sales process, you don't get as much time to foster that relationship. And customers are very sensitive to sales pitches. They're just not going to put up with it much. You've got to be good at being empathetic. Here's a definition I pulled. The ability to step into the shoes of another person, aiming to understand their feelings and perspective, and to use that understanding to guide our actions. So there's a blog on our site. You can see the URL here. You can just search for SalesNexus teaching salespeople empathy, and it'll come up. But it's a short little example of some things you can do to help your salespeople learn to be empathetic. I've mentioned the internet and how it changed things a couple of times already, and just to dig into that a little more, why that's so important. This is what this graph is showing, is that most companies do not respond to their leads within 24 hours. Vast majority of you get a lead today, like maybe right now while you're in this webinar, a lead comes in. And for most of you, that lead is not going to get a call till tomorrow sometime. Very few are calling, really immediately. And that's a really big mistake in today's world. So here's a graph of the success rate you have based on when you call or how quickly you call. In other words, when you call a lead for the first time, how likely are they to be qualified when you talk to them? If you call them in 5 minutes or less, you can see very likely. And as time goes by, as you drag your feet and don't make that first call, you can see your odds of qualifying that lead dwindle to almost nothing. And I can tell you this is not my data. This is a study that I think was on InsideSales.com. It's very common knowledge now. There's a lot of research out there about this kind of thing. But you've got to factor this into your sales approach, because what you may not realize, even in very traditional businesses, like I mentioned earlier, we're here in Houston, and we work with some energy service companies. It's not really our focus, but just being here, we've met a few, and that's my background. And I know that's a very traditional business where it's all about the relationships. You know, if I've been working at an energy service company in sales for a few years, then most of my pipeline is full of opportunities with people that I've known for several years. You know, it's not so much about new leads per se, right? But that doesn't change the fact that when somebody goes looking for information on the internet and they end up on your website and they either, like we talked about before, fill out some form requesting some information or downloading something or something like that, or they just find your phone number and call you, their experience at that moment is not what you think it is, because it's not what it used to be, right? If they contact you, if they've just found you on the internet, what's most likely is that when they found you, they were also looking at a whole page full of search results that included your competitors' websites as well. And for whatever reason, they chose to contact you. Well, that's great. But if you think they're going to sit there and wait for you to call them, you're crazy. They're not. What they're going to do is they're going to hit the back button, and they're going to go to one of your competitors' sites, and they're going to fill out their form too, thereby increasing their odds of getting a response very quickly, which is what they want, right? Which means if you wait till tomorrow to call that lead, your competitor will beat you to the punch, and you will have already lost. They don't need to talk to you anymore, because now they got your competitor telling them everything they want to know, right? It's crucial. And again, it doesn't just apply to brand new leads on the internet that you've never heard of before. It could be one of your best customers, one of the employees, one of the users who just needs some help, right? Here's another graph, kind of a different way to think about the same thing, where people are using the internet in the buying process. And you can see that most of their time on the internet is spent in the early stages, right? So they're doing a lot of research, and essentially, to me, the most straightforward way to think about this is that they're waiting till the last possible minute to get engaged with a salesperson, right? For obvious reasons, right? They don't want to be sold to. They want to evaluate options and get as much information as they can on their own, and only at the last minute, when they just can't get the answers they need, or they just absolutely got to talk to somebody about unique details in their world, that's when they're going to reach out to you. So the point being, the mistake a lot of us make is when someone contacts us and they're in these early stages, we treat them like they're down here. And that just scares them away. Again, they hit the back button, they go to your competitor's site, and they get what they're looking for. We've got to be really good at that empathy thing that I mentioned earlier, so that, among other things, we can know where they are in their buying process. It's not so much about your sales process as it is what's their buying process. And depending upon your business and your industry, that buying process may vary a lot from customer to customer. You've really got to be good at understanding that. I mentioned lead nurturing earlier. So this is a good way to think about it. This is a buying process up here, the arrows. I become aware I have a problem. I start to do some research on the internet to get educated about options and things. And then I get engaged with different companies, with your salespeople. I gather more information, and I start making a decision, right? Well, just like I said a minute ago, when somebody has just become aware they have a problem, you don't want to start sending them vendor comparisons and pricing information or proposals, right? What you want to send them is things that help them move to the next step. Okay, I have a problem. Now I want to do something about it. I want to get some information. So what we want to do is have content marketing pieces that we're sending out to these leads automatically reflecting where they are in their buying process and helping them move to the next step, not trying to make them jump from one end of the process to the other, just one step at a time. And this can all be automated. If you have a CRM today, if you've got an email marketing program, you should be able to do this. In fact, there's information on our website. You can Google SalesNexus Starter Kit, and there's some videos, real short and to the point, that'll give you a really good roadmap for how to write content pieces that can work in this way to nurture your leads and move them forward in your process. So what we find is that a lot of companies today have something that they call a CRM that can take all sorts of different shapes and sizes. We find that they're not using it for managing any kind of lead nurturing process, most likely. And we find that seldom are they actually even using it to manage any kind of a pipeline of future business. Ultimately, unfortunately, it usually ends up being used as basically a big electronic Rolodex in the sky, right? It's a place where at least I can go and, get the phone number and the address of my customers. And if I'm lucky, all my salespeople are doing a pretty good job of keeping that up to date. And when, let's say, a salesperson quits and I need to reassign those accounts to someone else, that can be pretty easy, right? If you're managing your pipeline and so on in your CRM, believe it or not, you're doing way better than most people. I don't know exactly why, because no question, all the major CRMs that we've all heard about have great pipeline management capabilities. I don't think it's so much about the technology, really. I think it's about the process and, knowing how we want to standardize sales opportunities. So when I run a report, the forecast revenue, I know I'm looking at real data, not just made-up numbers, right? But the point of this slide is, if you're still managing your sales pipeline like this, standing in front of the sales team in the Monday morning sales meeting and having people call out to you, yeah, okay, I had 2 proposals last week, then you really don't have any sort of process in place. The problem that we all run into is that salespeople are salespeople. They're great at telling you what you want to hear. That's what they do with customers, right? And they'll do it with you too when you start asking them about their pipeline. You need to make it objective. Criteria that they can't really fudge. So, just simple screenshot of some graphs. The point of this is this one in the middle here, daily calls logged. So, it's tracking how many calls each salesperson has logged by day, right? Well, that's cool. You know, if you have that now, awesome. That's a pretty big step forward. If you don't, it probably seems like, oh man, that would be so awesome. I would be able to, hold my salespeople accountable and everything. Yeah, kind of. But what you find when you start to use your CRM to measure this kind of thing is that the generic stuff just really isn't enough, right? Like, let's say that you sell some sort of construction equipment, right? Big machines, tractors or dump trucks or something like that. Well, there are some accounts who are going to order the really top-of-the-line expensive machines and or order multiples of them. And there are some that you'll be lucky to sell them your least expensive machine because that's all they can afford, right? So what I really need to know is, did Chandler here make a whole bunch of calls to really small guys? Or did he make a whole bunch of calls to really big opportunities? Or is it some combination thereof, right? So that little detail, that, how many trucks do they need or whatever, that's what makes all the difference in the world. In every dashboard I'm going to have in that business, that's the little detail that matters, and that's a detail that only I care about. You wouldn't care about it, right? So that's the key, is using your CRM to track those little things that make your business unique. And what I think is a good way to think about this is, even amongst your competitors, right? You might think, well, if my competitors can, are tracking this, that, and the other thing, well, then I probably want to track the same thing. Actually, no, that's not the case. You're different than your competitors, right? You have a competitive advantage. That's how you go to market. That's how you present yourself to your customers. It's those things that make you different that really ought to be part of the metrics that you're measuring, right? Who are the customers? What is the unique characteristic of a customer that values those unique differences that you bring to the market? Let's measure that stuff. Then you're going to have data that's actionable, where you could literally get up, walk down the hall, and go, Chandler, hey, awesome. You made 80+ calls, and they're all huge accounts. Wow, what a productive day. Or maybe, hey, Chandler, I see you made 80+ calls. That's great. I really appreciate the effort. But I also noticed that they're all real tiny, right? That's actionable information. Just another example of the same thing. I can keep track of how many emails each employee is sending out and things like that. But I need to know, are they emailing good accounts or bad accounts, right? We talked about empathy and fostering empathy in your sales team. So really, the step one to empathy is knowing how to ask good questions and being a good listener, right? Hopefully, you know what those questions are, right? You get a good prospect in front of you, and you need to qualify them, right? And quantify the opportunity. Well, you know the questions to ask, right? Hopefully your sales team knows the questions to ask. Hopefully they're good at listening and also, asking probing questions to get people talking. A lot of times getting the answers to these questions is not easy. People have a natural resistance to just, I don't want to share that with you. You have to be good at getting them to open up. That's all part of what I call empathy. But your CRM can be a measurement of their effectiveness with this. So this is just an example. These are some sales opportunities that I pulled out of our system. And in our world, I want to know, what are you currently using for CRM? What's your current Salesforce or ACT or whatever? What's your role in the decision? You know, are you the decision maker or not, obviously. What's your time frame for making a change or making a decision? So obviously there's other things, but those are some basics. Obviously, how many users are you going to have? That's key for us. That's the one that defines the economic value. Yours will be different, right? It might be how many kids do you have, or you know, how many square feet in your house, or whatever. But you know what those things are, and I can look at a list of people that my salesperson called this week or today or whatever, and look at these columns, and if it's all filled out, well, then I know they're doing a good job of asking questions and listening, right? But if half of it's blank, then we got a problem, right? So I can teach my salespeople what to ask, and I can teach them how to listen, and then I can hold them accountable to actually doing it. And all I had to do to be able to do this, really, is create some custom fields in my CRM. It's that simple. That's good news. Not hard to do. So time management. Let's talk about that for a minute. This is one where I see a lot of companies getting a little bit off track. It's an area where the kind of, I don't know, the way I like to refer to it is the inmates are running the asylum to an extent, right? The salespeople do things the way they do them, and management really has trouble getting them to adopt any kind of consistent process. Well, the short version of this story is you're just not going to be able to manage your sales team. You're not going to be able to manage a consistent flow of new prospects until you can manage your salespeople's time, until they can manage it themselves, until they can stay on top of the right opportunities in the right way without spending an hour every morning trying to get organized, right? That's what basic follow-up management is all about, right? At most CRMs, that's out of the box. You should be able to do that, right? But salespeople resist it for obvious reasons. They kind of don't want to be held accountable, right? What you don't realize is that they're wasting a tremendous amount of time every day. Part of it is because they are taking the time in the morning to get organized. Part of it's because they got good old-fashioned call reluctance, right? That is a killer disease in the sales world, and it's very common. I don't know, I've never done a statistical study of it, but I would say that probably 50% of the salespeople I've ever hired and managed suffer from call reluctance to some degree or another. And when I say call reluctance, what I mean is just, you know, at least every now and then you have that day where just getting on the phone and making your calls is tough. That you sit, you know, for 5 minutes in between every call, Googling and goofing around, right? Instead of just hammering through your calls and getting them done. If calling on the phone is part of your sales process, then you got to be good at being efficient at making your calls, right? The more calls you make, the more sales you make. So if you're psychologically having trouble getting, you know, geared up to get on the phone, if you're afraid of it or whatever, and it happens to everyone. It happens to me, happens to everybody, and it happens to your salespeople a lot more than they'll ever admit, and a lot more than you probably think. So that's happening to you. The worst part about it is that between those two things, I just got to get organized in the morning, I got to go through my inbox and see what happened over the evening, and, you know, kind of map out my day and stuff like that. And also I'm just kind of a little afraid of getting on the phone. Between those two things, unfortunately what happens is your sales guy's not really making many calls until it's about lunchtime, right? Or maybe 10:30, 11. And guess what? If you're calling decision makers, you're calling executives, you're calling C-level, VP level folks, well, when are they sitting at their desk? When are you at your desk? First thing in the morning, right? And that's it. I don't know about you, but if somebody wants to get me on the phone, they can try me around 7:30, and somewhere around 8:30, I start having meetings back to back to back, and I'm just not even going to answer the phone. So good luck, right? But that first little hour, that's when I'm having my coffee and just not in meeting, right? So your salespeople need to take advantage of that. It might be different windows of the day depending on the business you're in. If you're calling on consumers, I don't know, maybe it's 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. is your sweet spot. But you definitely don't want your salespeople showing up at 7 p.m. and spending 45 minutes getting their act together, and then they start making their calls, and 15 minutes later, it's too late. That's why they've got to get time management down. They need to, every day before they go home, they need to have all their follow-up calls and everything organized for the next day. I need to be able to come in here to my task list, that's what we're looking at here, and sort it by this regarding, that's what we call it, you know, the what is it about, right? And like these calls here, when new leads come into our system, they go on a campaign that's going to remind the salesperson to call 4 or 5 different times over the course of 5 or 6 days. So I come in here and I sort my task list, and I know, okay, here's my new lead calls. Those are the ones I got to make first, because those are the ones where, you know, the candle's burning, time is running out. I can just get on the phone and I know exactly why I'm calling these guys. I don't have to sit and look at the notes or, you know, go through my notebook and remember what the heck, you know. I just know. I got to call Gina because she started a free trial and nobody's talked to her yet. Simple. You need to get your sales team organized in this way. You need to get them all on board to following a process. Because otherwise, if you don't, when you get that report of how many calls got made, what does it really mean? You're not really comparing apples to apples anymore. So when we do all this, when we get processes in place like this, what it does, it gives you the ability to hold the sales team accountable. Now, I'm not saying it's all about, you know, sticks versus carrots. That's definitely not. We're talking about salespeople, right? They're money motivated, they're motivated by contests, they're motivated by all sorts of things, and you should leverage all of that, right? In fact, measuring how many calls got made to big accounts or how many new leads were qualified or whatever is really crucial in your process. And then recognizing achievement around that, it's a huge way to motivate everybody. And they're competitive by nature. They're going to compete with each other. So when you walk down the hall or in the sales meeting, you shout out and give Sam an attaboy for how many big accounts he qualified last week. Well, guess what? Sally's going to want to be on that list too. So she's going to work a little harder on that this week, right? So for sure, we want to have lots of carrots. We want the carrots to be aligned with what really matters in your business. However, you still need to be prepared to hold the team accountable, and there needs to be consequences, right? It can't just be talk, because salespeople will see through that in a New York minute. Now, it doesn't mean you're firing them either. It doesn't mean you're even threatening to fire them. But what you have to do is have kind of a, you know, a contingency like this, right? The first time let's say the goal is every week you're supposed to make X number of calls to accounts, you know, of this size or something like that, right? I need to make 30 of those calls this week. Well, okay, so the first time it doesn't happen, I only made 25 instead of 30. First of all, you sure as heck don't want to ignore it. You got to just say, hey, Sam, the goal's 30, you made 25. What happened? What? I know that's the goal. What happened? How can I help you? Is there something going wrong that's getting in your way? Right? That's all. Simple. A lot of times that's all they need, right? They just need to know you're watching. And then if it happens again next week, then you're warning them and saying, hey, Sam, we talked about this last week. I asked you if I could help. Maybe we made a few adjustments, whatever. And it's only 25 again this week. If it happens again, we're going to have to do whatever. And then that's what the third time is, right? I don't know what it is in your business. It doesn't have to be any of these things, but it has to be something. And it doesn't, as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be you're fired or you're going to be fired or anything like that. It just has to be something that they value, right? So if you're feeding them leads, if leads are coming in from the website, if that's a big part of their pipeline, then maybe they don't get them, for some period of time or until they rectify the situation. I've seen companies who say, hey, if you're at the end of the month, if you haven't met all your basic calling and qualifying and networking and referral goals and whatever those things are for you, then you're not eligible for commission. Or maybe you don't get as much of a commission. Or, I don't know, maybe you don't get, the new accounts that come in, or I don't know. There's a million different options. The options in your business will be different from in mine, but either way, we're going to measure what they're doing, the activities, the behaviors that they're exhibiting all day, every day. How many calls did you make? How many conversations did you have? How many of those conversations yielded, complete profile of information in those fields that we looked at earlier? And maybe that's it, right? Because if they're doing that and they're doing it enough, then the rest is going to take care of itself, right? They're going to find some qualified prospects if they're calling the right people and they're asking the right questions. And if they just do more of it, get organized and do a lot more of it, they're going to fill up their pipeline. So back to lead nurturing a little bit. So we have this process. Our salespeople are making lots of calls. They're asking lots of questions. They're being very empathetic. They're qualifying some prospects, and they're disqualifying some as well, right? For any number of reasons. How many, what percentage you want to shoot for trying to qualify, that's totally dependent on your industry and your way of doing things. A simple example would be customer has the right number of employees, they're in the right industry, they have a need, but they don't have a budget, right? They're just not going to be spending money on this year. Okay, they're not qualified. Maybe they go on your follow-up list for, November or December when they're putting together next year's budget, but they're not qualified for an opportunity right now, right? Well, things can change, right? And you do not want your salesperson spending a whole bunch of their time, nurturing that lead for 6 months just because maybe we'll get in the budget for next year. Especially depending upon the size of deals that you're chasing. But, you just can't afford to invest a whole lot of time in that. You want your salespeople focused on the ones they're going to close now, right? So what you have to have is some kind of way, some kind of system to put the right message in the right place at the right time so that each of these, let's just call them cold leads or unqualified leads, are getting nurtured, but your salespeople aren't focusing a whole bunch of their time on it. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really not that hard. I think a lot of people get stuck on the creating the messages part. If you're a sales guy, sales girl, that may seem like it's something you're just not good at. But believe it or not, you actually are. It's just sort of asking yourself the right questions. I mentioned earlier that starter kit video that we have on our site. Check that out. It'll tell you how to do this, and it'll make it super easy. Here's a process like we looked at earlier where we're nurturing leads as they move through their buying process with different sorts of content pieces that are accomplishing two things, right? They're helping the customer move through the process from one step to the next at their own pace without pushing them or turning them off. But they're also sort of diagnosing where they are, right? So months could go by where I haven't talked to this prospect. But I know because, a few months ago he looked at our case studies, and then a couple months went by, and next thing you know, he was looking at our ROI analysis. And just recently, he downloaded our importance of, our super cool features. That's a huge signal to me. I need to pick up the phone. That guy's about to make a decision. So one of the unique things about SalesNexus is that when somebody engages with these pieces, your salespeople can be alerted to call them, and they know why. They know that prospect A, they're calling because they're somewhere in between awareness and education. They're looking at case studies. But prospect B is looking at a vendor comparison. They're getting way closer to starting to make decisions, and they need to be a little more aggressive, right? You put that kind of process in place, and all of a sudden, all the leads that you've ever talked to are getting all these messages that are personalized for them, and your salespeople are spending all their time on the phone with people who have already raised their hand and said, here's what I care about right now. So they know exactly what to talk about with them, to just move them one step further down the process. It really just supercharges your sales process. So here's an example of how this works. So TPR Finance, they're in the credit card processing business. And if you know anything about that business, you know it's a very competitive business. There's a lot of people out there making lots of cold calls, and it's real kind of a hardcore sell sort of environment typically. So these guys had 10 salespeople, close rate of 20%. They're making tons of phone calls. It's crazy. I forget the numbers exactly, but I remember being stunned. Like each rep is making, I don't know, 150 calls a day or something like that. They're selling $500,000 a year. So all we did was took all those 150 calls they're making every day and made sure that everybody they talk to, they get an email from, and put all those people on some sort of ongoing campaign like we've talked about. And it was actually 2 emails. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a huge marketing effort to create that. They created 2 emails. And what it did was it generated $42,000 in additional monthly sales within a couple of months. I mean, it was like mind-blowing how quickly it impacted their business. And these guys have been doing business the same way for like 20 years and had never tried it. We put something very simple in place, generated almost $500,000 in sales in the first year. So the point here is this is not rocket science. It is not hard to do, and it will pay off. This is not a, well, the best way to say it is it's going to put money on the bottom line, and it's going to happen fast. Because unless you're in some crazy business where, 9 or 8 out of 10 people that you talk to end up buying, so you just don't have a lot of leads, disqualified or lost leads, the numbers just work like this. It works that way for everybody. So you end up with this big hopper of people just getting automated messages and then interacting with those messages, and then that puts them back on your salesperson's call list for the day. And he says, hey, Bob, yeah, we haven't talked in 6 months, but I noticed you looked at the case study. Are you guys getting ready to make some decisions about this? Right? Boom. So some keys to success from our experience doing this for 15 years now. You have to plan for a successful implementation, meaning make sure you got the resources identified on your team. Who's going to be responsible for, getting data loaded, organized, who's going to train the team, who's going to be kind of the keeper of the process. You need that person, right? It could be the sales manager, could be more of your, your sales coordinator, sales assistant, could be your marketing person, but somebody's got to be monitoring what's happening in the data, knowing that, Sam and Sally are doing a great job of filling out these fields and everything, and putting customers on the nurturing campaigns and whatever. And then, Bob and Dave are not, and we need some extra training for Bob and Dave, because we got to get everybody doing things the same way. You got to get the salespeople to use it, obviously. Without them, you're dead. So make sure that they're part of the process. Make sure they're part of deciding on what you're going to use, what the process is going to be, putting together those marketing pieces. They can be a great resource for that. Get them involved early. Doesn't mean you have to let them make the decision for you. You just got to let them be part of the process. Make sure you get good, consistent data. Everybody's got to play the game. Everybody's got to play the game the same way, or you just get a big mess. And you have to have actionable management metrics, not just generic, here's the dashboards that my CRM had set up in it automatically when I first logged on. That's not going to cut it. You're going to need to create reports, dashboards, lists, whatever, that are based on those unique little details in your business that we talked about earlier. Some of the things that people get wrong when they're selecting or implementing a CRM. First is they put the features in front of the process. I sell technology, that's what we do. But what I've learned is that the technology is not the answer, it's the process. So it's real easy to say in the conference room, okay guys, we need a CRM, or we need to replace our CRM, or we need to upgrade our CRM, or change it, or modify it, or whatever. Let's put a committee together and go look at options. And then you start scheduling demos with vendors and stuff like that, and they come in and they show you their razzle-dazzle. And they show you all these features that you didn't even know existed. They certainly weren't on your list, but they look cool, right? Oh man, that looks awesome. And all of a sudden you're selecting technologies because of their shiny chrome bumper instead of the size of the motor inside. Figure out what your process is. And then create a list of, it doesn't have to be a long list, you don't have to spend weeks on it, but create a list of 10, 20 things that the thing has to do in your business. And then just go find a system that does that. That's all you need. I mentioned before about getting salespeople involved in the process early and often. That's important. And think about integration. One of the greatest ways to get salespeople involved in using your CRM is to let them have access to account information in the system. So you may need to integrate the CRM with your accounting system or your ERP. So I could be out in the field sitting in a customer's office with my iPad or my notebook or my smartphone, and we're talking about the next order, but the customer says, well, how many did we order last time? If your salesperson can pull that up right there and keep the ball moving forward, man, that's powerful, right? Or maybe it's when they close a deal, right? They get the order. They put a proposal in. They've got a sales opportunity in your sales pipeline, and now the customer calls and says, okay, we're ready to go. And they send you the PO or whatever. Well, if the salesperson can just log on and click a button and say, convert that to an order, and then it sends it over to accounting and things start happening without him having to fill out some kind of order form manually and things like that, they like that. So when it comes to implementing the CRM, don't even start if you haven't figured out what your process is. And I don't mean go hire a sales consultant and have them spend 30 days running around your office and, you know, spend $5,000 with them to figure it out for you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just write down the 5 steps that you have to go through to close a deal and build the CRM around that. Get your data ready. Get that started now. It's going to take time. It always does. Get to work on that now. Don't wait till the last minute, because you'll end up throwing it all together and then, you know, garbage in, garbage out. And then resources. Plan to spend some time on it. Somebody's going to have to. Either somebody on your staff is going to have to carve out some time to help set it up and then manage it going forward, or you're going to need a consultant who will do that for you, and of course that costs money. So just to give you a little contrast, typical CRM subscription for a 10-user group, you know, 8 or 9 salespeople and then, you know, 1 or 2 management types. Typical CRM subscription for a pretty basic, you know, the names you've heard of, subscription, $700–800 a year. Now, you want to add on some marketing automation so we can do this lead nurturing and everything. You know, for those kind of tools, you're talking another $7,200 a year for 10 people. Then you've got to get the thing set up and implemented, right? And that's where the real surprise costs often come in. Most people don't have any idea what they're getting into. And the problem that you run into is that the vendor, the software vendor, is not going to tell you about this, right? They're going to undersell this part of it because they don't want to scare you off, right? So unfortunately, it kind of becomes a surprise after the fact. But these are typical costs, and they're not my numbers. They're studies that have been done. What you'll see said a lot in a lot of the research is that companies typically spend as much money on the implementation and consulting fees as they do on the actual subscription to the technology. So whatever the subscription is costing you, just double it. Because either you're paying a consultant or you're paying one of your employees to do it. So it's going to add up to $35,000 to $45,000 your first year to get your CRM, your marketing automation, and then go through everything it takes to really get it set up right and be supported through that first year so that you can focus on taking care of business and not playing with IT. So that's where SalesNexus is different. For 10 users, for $19,000, so less than half of that cost, we're doing all of that for you. We're providing premium support. We're consulting with you to understand help you figure out what the sales processes are, help you write those lead nurturing email campaigns, help you bring together all your data, sort it out, dedupe it, get it all straight and ready to go, help you automate workflows so that salespeople don't have to remember to do things that just happen as they move through the process. So it's really soup to nuts. It's very affordable, and it works. We know it works because our customers stay with us twice as long as they typically stay with other CRM subscriptions. The average customer lifetime is like 28 months. So basically, you sign up to the typical CRM, and in a couple of years, you're looking for a new one because it's not working out for you. That's typical. With SalesNexus, our average customer lifetime is more like 5 years. So people sign up, we help them get it right for their business, and they keep using it for 5 years or more. Now, before we run out of time here, wanted to let everybody know, we started our sales leadership workshop. So if what we're talking about here today rings a bell, if you want to work on how you can do this kind of thing in your business, join the sales leadership workshop. We actually had our first session yesterday. We're going to have another session on the 26th and another one on the 9th. We're not really covering the same thing in every session, but what you're going to get later today is an email with a link to register for the Sales Leadership Workshop and also a link to the recording of yesterday's session. So you can take a look at that. If it looks like it's interesting to you, sign up to the other two sessions. Love to see you there. There's no cost. Love to see you there. And otherwise, you know, if getting a CRM in place, if working with a vendor that's going to help you really customize it to your business and help you be successful with it sounds good, then let us know. Start a free trial. Go to salesnexus.com, and I'll put some links in the email that you're going to get to that starter kit video that I mentioned about how to write those emails, and the other the blog post about how to teach empathy with your sales team, so you'll have easy access to that. All right, I know we're right at the top of the hour, but a couple of questions showing up there. Let me just respond to those real quick. Let's see. Somebody's asking about transferring CRM data from other CRMs. So yeah, you can, most of your systems, Salesforce, Microsoft, you know, all the names you know, you can get a backup. They'll give you like a zip file that has a whole bunch of Excel files in it. You send that to us, and our guys know how to take that and map it into our system so you don't lose anything. You lose any of your custom fields. You don't lose your follow-up calls or your sales opportunities or your notes or any of that. We can make that real easy. Somebody's asking about support. Yeah, so most systems have a what they call an SLA, right? Service level agreement for support. And your out-of-the-box SLA with like Salesforce, for instance, is they promise that they will return or respond to your request for support within 48 business hours. Meaning, you know, like it's Friday morning, and you're working on some reports, you're trying to get ready for the Monday morning sales meeting, right? And you have some questions or some technical problems or whatever. So ask for help, and you're not going to hear back from them until Tuesday. So it's too late, right? So they'll all sell you an upgrade to something they call something like premium support, and it costs typically about an extra $10 or $20 per person per month. With SalesNexus, everyone gets premium support. We have chat support. People love that. It's super fast. The guys are awesome. Just so you can Google our reviews about that. You'll see that all over the place. And you can phone us, you can email us, and you get same-day response. And that's included in every subscription. It's not only for the ones that pay a whole bunch of money. Let's see. Yeah, okay. a couple of questions here about the sales leadership workshop. Yeah, so there's no charge, there's no requirements or anything. It's just if you're a sales leader, if you're managing salespeople, then what we're doing is having some more in-depth discussions about sales process, about measuring and holding salespeople accountable, about coaching salespeople, about hiring, training salespeople, and all working together, you know, talking amongst ourselves, sharing war stories. And for instance, what everybody that was in the session yesterday is working on now is just writing down their process. And between now and the 26th, they're sending them to me, and I'm working with them one-on-one to kind of, you know, shore it up. And then on the 26th, part of what we'll do is just review those with each other and you know, make comments and suggestions. So, yeah, if you can join us, please. You'll get a link in the email later today and get registered. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate everybody's time, and hope you all have a great afternoon. And if there's any way that I can help you, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.